Welcome back to another UNC Tar Heels football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching us on our rapidly growing YouTube channel that is called Tar Heel Illustrated, a THI publisher, Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of football recruiting. She is Miss Deana King. And Deana, we are here to discuss what's left of Carolina's football recruiting class of 2023. The Tar Heels have 18 commitments in the books. We think they're going to take a few more, 3, maybe 4. We'll kind of get into that here in this podcast. Certainly a couple of kids, recent offers they are hot in pursuit of. We're going to discuss those kids today, plus a couple of kids that are committed are taking other visits. Deana will tell you who they are and what that means coming up toward the end of this podcast. But Deana, let's go ahead and dive into it. The first 2 kids we're going to talk about are committed currently to East Carolina, but they're both absolutely in play. You have talked to both of them extensively, so you're going to have a lot of intel here on those 2 kids. It begins with Ty Adams. He's a 2-star athlete, 5'11", 173 pounds, plays for Swainsboro, Georgia High School. He committed to ECU June 19th. You talked to him a lot. So what is the latest with Ty Adams, and why is Carolina pursuing him as hard as they are now?
He was offered in August. Carolina missed out on some other DBs, and so they started targeting some new guys, and Ty Adams was one that they targeted. Like you said, a 2-star, but this staff does not care about that. I mean, they see him as a really good player. He's a very good athlete. He plays quarterback for his high school, a smaller high school in Georgia. So most of the cases, the best athlete usually plays quarterback on a lot of those teams. But when I spoke to him, reached out to him after the offer, he was really quick to answer back. And sometimes I judge how much interest that a kid has by the response time that I get back from asking a question. And he was answered right back. So he was really excited about the offer. In fact, he was being honest. I asked him about Dre Bly, and he said that he had to look him up because, some of the younger guys might not know who Dre Bly is. But he certainly found out who he was, and it made a really big impression that someone like the stature Dre Bly reached out to him. And so he was pretty upfront and said he was going to come to Chapel Hill to visit that week of Florida A&M. He made it, came away really impressed, and got to see everything that Carolina had to offer. And, I think he's a really strong candidate to possibly flip. No timeline on anything. I know he says he hasn't been back to ECU, but, schedule-wise, he could. And he could also come back to UNC. But, with kids like that, they want to make sure that they're making the right decision, especially if they're going to possibly decommit to another school.
If he's there for the Notre Dame game, that would tell you something, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he's also been offered by Georgia Tech. There are other Power Fives that have offered him. And Aiden Duncan is another kid also committed to East Carolina. He's a 3-star athlete, 6'2", 178 pounds, Whitfield Academy in Mableton, Georgia. There's an obvious connection right there. He committed to ECU on August 1st. So what's the latest with him?
Yeah, three of these guys we're going to talk to got offered in August. He as well got an offer in August, and kind of right after he committed to East Carolina. But the thing with Aiden is he's teammate with Caleb Lavallee, the linebacker commit that's committed to North Carolina. So he has someone in his ear all the time pushing for Carolina. And so when I spoke to him, he came after he came up for a visit the Florida A&M game as well, and had a really good time and felt a lot of love for North Carolina and the staff, and just basically had a great time. Caleb was there too, of course. And so he got to see everything that North Carolina had to offer, with a night game and, what goes on in Chapel Hill. So like Adams, I think North Carolina has a great shot to flip him as well. And he plays quarterback for his high school team. So he's a really good athlete. Like I mentioned with Adams, the staff, they love these kids that are multiple and can do a lot of things. And they seem like kids that they can possibly mold into really good ball players.
I have to ask this question because a lot of the Carolina fans that are watching or listening to this are wondering this themselves. Why is Carolina going after a couple of ECU commits? And I don't, you and I know that East Carolina's got a lot of good players. There are a lot of good kids that end up going to East Carolina, and a lot of times the star ratings don't matter. UNC currently has 3 guys in the NFL that at this junction, their senior year, had 0 stars. Mac Hollins, Cole Holcomb, and Javonte Williams. They were all 0-star kids in September of their senior years, okay? However, Carolina fans, given the way recruiting's been the last few years, are going to wonder, why are we going after these guys from ECU? That's what they're probably thinking, okay? So answer the question, why 2 ECU commits and why kids that they offered in August heading into their senior years?
Could be several reasons. I mean, some of these kids might not be, exposure-wise, I mean, both of these schools in Georgia, Swainsboro, I believe, is like a 2A school, and Whitefield Academy is a private school. So, it may be exposure-wise, every time. I mean, you talk to coaches, there's always going to be some diamonds in the rough that people find. I mean, look at Javonte. I mean, he's in the NFL now doing really well, and he was from a really good football program in Eastern North Carolina. But Georgia has so much talent there. I mean, kids could be like a top 100 kid, a 100 through 150 and still be a really good player. And so, I mean, that's a $1 million question that Dre Bly and Charlton Warren will have to answer, why they decided to go after 2 East Carolina commits. But I think it really doesn't matter. These kids may have not been on a lot of recruiting radars of other schools. I mean, they did have some Power 5 offers, but it's just, it's something that really I can't answer. I can just put my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think people got to trust the evaluation. That's what I would tell Carolina fans. Any Carolina fan I talk to, you should just trust the evaluation. They've been pretty good at it so far. Nobody needs to question why they would go after David Hobbs, 4-star defensive end, 6'5", 268 pounds, Robinson High School in Concord, North Carolina. We have talked extensively about him for quite some time. In fact, we had a time there we thought there was he was going to pop. That didn't pop. He kept putting it off, and now there's all kinds of rumors swirling around about Auburn and Alabama, and Michigan, Tennessee, even South Carolina was thrown out there this week. So what is the latest with David Hobbs, and where do you sense this thing is going?
His recruitment is unlike a lot of high 4-star kids. He was a lot under the radar. And until Rivals Camp, he didn't have many Power 5 offers. I believe North Carolina was one of the schools that first offered him. I mean, he had some local offers like Charlotte and Appalachian and stuff like that. And then I believe Maryland and Louisville and jumped in, and then North Carolina. And then, he was going, he had been to UNC, he went to UNC after being offered the spring game, and everything seemed like North Carolina, you know, and but Mr. Hobbs continued to be recruited started popping up on other college radars, and he had made some visits, you know, unofficial over the summer, and some of these colleges really liked what they saw and they offered. So now you've got teams like Alabama and Tennessee and Georgia really, really pushing the recruiting on him, and it's worked. He's kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of a pair of bad news. I really think if he had committed on the original day, he would have been a Tar Heel. But these other schools got involved, and I think Carolina's chances have dwindled a lot. And I would think that he will probably end up in the Southeastern Conference at either Alabama, Georgia, or Tennessee. He's got those three schools down for official visits. And, you know, when I asked him about North Carolina, if he was going to get to make a trip back to North Carolina, didn't get a response. So, you know, I don't know. And you got to read the tea leaves there.
Would you say that Carolina's out of the running yet, or would you say it's just trending?
No, I don't think they're totally out.
Trending that way?
They're in state. So, I mean, recruiting, anything can happen. If Carolina, if they have a really good season, you know, some of these kids might say, oh, well, you know, they've won 8-9 games, you know, maybe it's trending back up, because we've talked about how the shine has kind of come off.
Yeah. And
the 23 class kind of, I mean, the class is really solid. They're a top 25 class right now, and they have a chance to add a few more kids to solidify that top 25 class. But, you know, the fans have gotten spoiled with Mac bringing in a number 11 and a top 15 last 2 or 3 years. But they need a class that are more like a program class, and then go all out for 24. If they have a really good season, they can go after some of the top 24 kids. Podcast later on that.
Yeah, well, that's true, and they're sort of doing that. That's the way they've begun their process with 24. That they're shooting high for that class. Ginorris Wilson is a 3-star offensive tackle, 6'5", 300 pounds. Lakeland, Florida high school. You know, when you look up stuff about him, you see Auburn pop up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia is offered, Oregon, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Louisville got offers all over. But Carolina came in there and offered him, I guess, in August as well. You say that Carolina wants another offensive lineman, so I would imagine that he has become a hot, important priority to the staff, because he sort of is the offensive lineman they're recruiting right now.
Well, they got 3 commits: Nolan McConnell up in Virginia, DJ Geth in South Carolina, and Robert Grigsby in Georgia. So they missed out on a few of their offensive line targets, and so they gave an offer out to Wilson, and he hasn't been to Chapel Hill. He said when I interviewed that he would like to make it up there. So, we'll see about that. We keep tracking him, but a lot of things point to Auburn, because he's been, I think, the relationships there with the coaches with Auburn have really influenced him. A Florida kid, is it's a nice track up to North Carolina from Florida where he's at. And so we just have to keep monitoring that, because or keep reaching out and seeing if he's going to take a visit, because, with him being open this week, it's kind of a quiet time. But next week, when the Fighting Irish comes down to Chapel Hill, they should have a really good big turnout for all classes to come to that game, because Notre Dame is your is a national brand, and everybody wants to see the golden domers and everything. So we will keep checking in with all these kids.
If they don't land Ginorris Wilson, is this a situation where they just hold that spot and maybe look for a transfer? Or I think another thing, you and I have talked about this some too. They're 3-0 right now. It's not a sexy 3-0, but they're still 3-0. But a 3-0 turns into 4-0 and 5-0 and 6-0 or 5-1 and 8-1. Suddenly that's kind of sexy. And there might be some kids that are committed elsewhere that they end up flipping. Either they're in programs where it appears there's going to be a coaching change and the kids reopen their recruitment. Do you think they go that route or possibly just hold that spot?
You never, like I say, you never know in recruiting until the kids sign the dotted line or whatever. So this staff historically has really went the high school route instead of the portal unless it was a major necessity. They went after they got Spencer Rollin on the line, Noah Taylor at that jack position. So, and they have been contributors so far, even though Spencer missed the last game with an injury. And so, and there's always a kid that may pop out from somewhere, kind of like Javante was his senior year in high school. You just have is really good at finding talent. So there could be some kids, like I said before, with the kids from ECU, some kids might not have had a major exposure or went to camps for whatever reason, may had come off an injury and was off fully recovered and is having a stellar senior year. So I think, they're at 18 now. They could take 2 or 3 or so more. Just want them to have some leeway just in case they do get some kind of possible transfer portals, because you never know. This transfer portal, you have no clue what's going to happen from one day to the next. So they always want to have that option available in case they need that.
Real quickly, let's hit on 2 committed kids that are going other places. We did a Twitter space the other night, and you brought up Chris Culver and Kaivion Keys. Chris Culver obviously committed on July 4th, 3-star wide receiver from Maiden. Where has he been and why?
He went to Blacksburg this past weekend, watched Virginia Tech and Boston College. He's got a few teammates that are trying to get notice, and you never know. He may just had went with his teammates up there trying to help them get some exposure and everything. But Virginia Tech was in Chris's top list. Obviously, there's a huge Virginia Tech influence there at Maiden with Caleb Farley, who had an outstanding career there at Maiden, just one of the top athletes they've had in that program. And he went on to Virginia Tech and had a great career, and now is playing in the NFL. And the Virginia Tech has always been one of the schools that Culver has, really liked. And, you've been up there. It's a great football atmosphere to go and check out, the Hokies and everything. Honestly, I think it was just a visit, just to have some fun, basically. I really think Culver knows what's in store for him if he stays with North Carolina. There's a pretty good chance that he will be catching passes from Drake May if Drake May continues on his upward trend. And there's basically no conflict there. Drake May is the quarterback there. Now, we don't know, obviously don't cover Virginia Tech, but I'm sure that their quarterback is not putting up the numbers that May and that offense is at North Carolina. And
you see the Old Dominion game?
Yeah, and so there's a plenty of opportunity to play because North Carolina is showing these guys that they're willing to throw. I mean, that game, they threw to 10 players, including the tight end. So if you're good enough, you're going to play and feel long. I honestly think that, Culliver was just going out with his buddies to have some fun and went up to Blacksburg.
Well, they need more receivers. They need more receivers in that room. Kaivion Keys, 3-star outside linebacker, committed August 29th. Verena High School in Richmond, Virginia. A little bit of a different story with him.
Kaivion Keys, he was interested, and we have been on Kaivion Keys commitment watch all basically late spring until summer, until he finally pulled the trigger. And then there's still a little mystery about it because he got offered by Texas A&M and Auburn right before he made his decision. He said he would still make his decision, and he picked Carolina. And now he says he's going on visits to Texas A&M and Auburn. And so my only thing is, there's a long ways from Richmond, Virginia to College Station and Auburn, Alabama. And the Tar Heels really did a good job recruiting him. They want him at linebacker. He is 6'2", 205. A lot of great frame like Cedric Gray. So a lot of these kids, they just, you get to go different places. And if you're 100% sure that you want to go to a place and you talk to, let's say, Coach Brown, say, Coach, I want to go to Texas. I've never been to Texas. I would love to go to Texas. But I always wondered if I was a college football player, what schools would I want to go to, and there's some interesting thoughts on that. But
I'd go on a recruiting visit to Hawaii, to Miami, to San Diego State, and then I'd
all warm places, right? No Michigan or South Bend or anything, or up there at
I've been
Penn
to
State or something.
I've been to all those places in the cold time of year, and I can't deal with that. So,
but kids want to have fun, and it's official visit. They don't have to pay anything, and so I wouldn't think too much about it unless they make several trips to the same that per school.
Like adults, some kids just love to be loved, and when you go on a recruiting trip, you're loved. You're showered with everything. So sometimes that's what kids want.
Get royalty treatment,
Yeah.
We can't forget
good food.
The food. The kids love
see
the food.
Games, get to eat some food, get to hang out. What the heck? I mean, honestly, why not do it? I understand why kids would. I understand why kids wouldn't. I think all the commitments need to be at the Notre Dame game. And unless there's a conflict, it would be interesting to see which ones are not.
Yeah, I expect him to have a really huge, all their commits, and then a lot of the top 24 kids, and then some 25s. They're getting ready to release the top 25, the top players in the class of 25.
Well, they've offered some 25s of late as well, so they're starting to get in on that. We'll dive more into some of that stuff later. Deana, thank you so much. Always good to do a recruiting podcast with you. Wow, we've been so swamped covering the football team. We haven't had time just to sit down and bang out some pods, but it's a bye week. We have no access with the football team this week, so we're grinding out a bunch of podcasts. She's Deana King. I'm AJ. Thanks for stopping by.